Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, ich darf Sie sehr herzlich begrüßen zu dem heutigen Vortrag. Es freut mich sehr, dass Sie trotz der Hitze draußen den Weg zu uns gefunden haben. Machen Sie Werbung für uns, sagen Sie gerne weiter, wie angenehm es im Museum in diesen Tagen ist. Hier lässt es sich tatsächlich aushalten. Ich begrüße Sie sehr herzlich und es ist mir eine Freude, Ihnen den Redner des heutigen Abends anzukündigen, Professor Dr. Yann Tristant von der renommierten KU, der Katholischen Universität in Leuven. Professor Dr. Tristant leitet an der Fakultät für Archäologie, Kunstgeschichte und Musikwissenschaften der KU Leuven die Forschungsgruppe für Archäologie und bekleidet dort den Lehrstuhl für ägyptische Archäologie. Er studierte Ägyptologie und Vor- und Frühgeschichte an der École du Louvre und an der Sorbonne, und bevor er 2006 dann mit einer Dissertation über das frühdynastische Nildelta promovierte. Nach seiner Promotion war Professor Tristant von 2006 bis 2010 wissenschaftlicher Mitarbeiter am IFAO, am Institut français d'Archéologie orientale in Kairo, und im Anschluss dann über ein Jahrzehnt an der Macquarie-Universität in Australien, ehe er dann 2021 an die KU Leuven berufen wurde. Seine Forschungsschwerpunkte liegen auf der prädynastischen Zeit und den frühen Dynastien Ägyptens mit einem ganz besonderen Fokus auf der Siedlungsarchäologie und der Geoarchäologie, und er leitet die Ausgrabungen in Abu Rawash, in Dendera und im Wadi Araba. Zu unserem Haus, zum Ägyptischen Museum, hat er eine besondere Beziehung, weil er auch mit Frau Dr. Flossmann gemeinsam am sogenannten Radjedef-Projekt arbeitet, das sich der Rekonstruktion von Hunderten, vermutlich deutlich über 1000 Fragmenten, Statuenfragmenten dieses Königs widmet. Und wir freuen uns, dass er uns heute mit seinem Vortrag mit dem Titel The Necropolis of Abu Rawash from the First Dynasty to the Reign of Radjedef einen Einblick in seine aktuellen Grabungen gewährt. Ganz herzlichen Dank für das Kommen, ganz herzlichen Dank für den Vortrag, den Sie uns heute Abend halten werden.
Dankeschön. Sorry for my German. My German is very bad, so I'm going to speak in, I was going to say in French. I'm going to speak in English tonight. No panic. I'm going to speak in English. So thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for your invitation. I would like to thank Dr. Arnulf and Dr. Melanie for their kind invitation, and all the staff of all the friendly staff of the museum for your invitation here. Tonight I'm going to talk about Abu Rawash. And Abu Rawash is maybe a site that is not very well known compared to other Old Kingdom sites, because Abu Rawash is mainly an Old Kingdom site and mainly a pyramid site. But I want to show you tonight that it's not only a pyramid site. The site was occupied, developed before the Pyramid Age, and was already a cemetery several centuries before. First, where is located Abu Rawash? Abu Rawash is a site located at 8 kilometers north of Giza. And if one day you took the highway to go from Cairo to Alexandria, you notice maybe on the right a kind of small mountain. I know it's a big word, but a small mountain, a small hill in the desert, and this hill is the area of Abu Rawash. This is a plan of Abu Rawash made by my late colleague Michel Lebeau, where you see the location of the pyramid of Jedefre, Radjedef, different name for the same, from the same person, so do not be surprised if sometime I say Jedefre or if I say Radjedef, it's the same one. You have this pyramid of the 4th dynasty, which is still visible in the landscape of Abu Rawash. But what I want to show you tonight is that in this area of Abu Rawash, you don't have only the pyramid of the 4th dynasty, but you have a very large archaeological area. A very large archaeological area comprising sites from different periods, from the late Predynastic to the Roman period. For example, for the Predynastic period, all the sites are located here in this part, and I'm going to describe today the cemetery excavated for the Nakada III period. Then, for the Old Kingdom, you have a small pyramid here, the number 8, a small pyramid that could be dated from the 3rd dynasty, the Lepsius pyramid. And then I will discuss with you the pyramid of the king Radjedef, the son of Khufu, and the cemetery of the 4th dynasty, which is located there, which is certainly the cemetery of the sons of Radjedef, the sons of the kings, the prince of the 4th dynasty. But here in this area, as you can see, you have also monuments from the Middle Kingdom, as you can see here, New Kingdom, and also a very large complex of tombs dated from the late period to the Greco-Roman period. So there is enough material here to talk during 3 hours. And I've got only 1 hour, and I will try to speak only about the Predynastic period and the 4th dynasty. So here on this Google Earth view, you see a detail of the Abu Rawash area. The modern village of Abu Rawash is located here. And close to the village, you have this hill where you can see here what could be a pyramid from the 3rd dynasty. Here on this small hill, the cemetery M, I will explain to you why it's called M later, from the 1st dynasty, which developed close to a late Nakada cemetery. So Nakada III period is the last period of the Predynastic, the last phase of the Predynastic period. We are here around, let's say, between 3,800 and 3,900. Then 1st dynasty here, 2,900 to 3,000, 2,900. Here 2,900, 1st dynasty, and here 4th dynasty around 2,700. The site was first excavated, the earliest remains of the site were excavated by a Dutch archaeologist, Adolf Claessens. In the 1950s, Adolf Claessens excavated the cemeteries located there in this area of Abu Rawash. The sites are there. I tried to find the sites on the field. I never found the sites. They have been destroyed since the 1950s. So it's impossible to find any remains of the excavation of Adolf Claessens. You see they are located there, here on this map. So we have to trust the publication of Adolf Claessens. Adolf Claessens says that he found excavated several cemeteries from the late Predynastic period, Nakada III period. And you see here the details of these cemeteries, but also, I forgot to translate, also a couple of tombs from the Middle Kingdom, Moyen Empire, located in this area. Today, the material is in Leuven, in the Netherlands, and I started the study of the material in the Netherlands. I started the catalogue of the Predynastic collection, and the aim is to continue with the material from Abu Rawash. But there are several hundreds objects located today in Leuven, so it will be a very long project to finish. In these tombs, so just a picture of those tombs, you've got some small mud brick tombs with some materials, some pottery objects, jars in the tombs. You can see the skeleton in this one in a contracted position on the side, very typical position for this early periods of Egypt. And I'm going to show you that these tombs well developed into the first pyramids. So the first stage in the development of the pyramid is in fact those kind of tombs, because here we have among the first evidence of funerary features, architecture in Egypt. Just a rectangular shaft with a mud brick walls inside the shaft. This type of tomb will develop into the first mastabas, and with the king Djoser in Saqqara, those mastabas will become the first step pyramid, and after that, during the Old Kingdom, we will have the pyramids themselves. So in one way, the origins of the pyramids are there in this kind of tombs. This is what I would like to see. Let's start after that with this cemetery M located there. You have here two different cemeteries. First one is the cemetery M. M for Montet, Pierre Montet, who was the first archaeologist to excavate this site. Close to this site, you have another cemetery called Necropolis F, or cemetery F. F for Fernand Bisson de la Roque, who was also an Egyptologist, a French archaeologist who worked in this area. You have here a first dynasty cemetery, and there a fourth dynasty cemetery, very close one to each other. And you notice that in the middle of the M cemetery, you have a tomb from the fourth dynasty located in the middle of the cemetery. The site, here is a view of this site. When I say it's above a small hill, you see this hill dominating the Nile Valley. You have to imagine that in the late 4th millennium BC, the Nile River was not in its actual position, but the river was flowing close, almost at the foot of the cemetery. So the cemetery was closer than to the river that it is located today. On top of this hill, as you can see on the pictures, you've got different halls. And these halls are the remains of the first dynasty mastaba. Yeah, just this view to show you the mountain. It's not very high, it's only 20 meters high. But early in the morning, when you have to climb the mountain, this could be quite difficult sometimes. The site was excavated by Pierre Montet. And I'm sure that you know this name, Pierre Montet, because as you can see here on this picture, Pierre Montet is the one who discovered the royal tombs of Tanis. The royal tomb of Tanis, but Pierre Montet was quite unlucky. He excavated in Abu Rawash in 1913-1914. And he has to stop the excavation because of the First World War. And in Tanis, he discovered the royal tombs in 1939, just at the eve of the Second World War. You see why I say he was unlucky. Pierre Montet was a membre scientifique, pensionnaire, so a scientific member of the French Institut when he worked in Abu Rawash in 1913. Fortunately, he left some photographic documents in the archive of IFAO, and also one publication only. One publication, so two articles, but this is part 1 and part 2, in a journal called the Chemie, a journal published in Strasbourg, where he published the result of his excavation in Abu Rawash. And the site is quite interesting. It's interesting because in Abu Rawash, he excavated a dozen of large mud brick mastaba. So you know what is a mastaba? A mastaba, a large rectangular tomb. We have the first evidence of this mastaba in the late Predynastic, early Dynastic period. So for the first dynasty, you've got this kind of architecture, rectangular tombs made of mud bricks with decorations of what we call facade palace, with different niches in the walls. And the owner of the tomb was buried inside with a huge quantity of material. Another view of his publication, you see here a tomb. I know they're not very good quality, but you have a rectangular shaft, a rectangular pit dug in the rock with a shaft here, a vertical shaft going to a burial chamber. So you see this rectangular pit with a shaft going to this burial chamber. So Montet excavated those tombs, and a large part of the material was sent to the Louvre Museum and is still on display today in Paris. And as part of my research, I studied the material housed today in Paris. I studied part of the material which is today in Strasbourg, because Pierre Montet was professor of archaeology in Strasbourg after IFAO. And another large part of the material in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. But hundreds of objects are located also in the basement of the French Institute. Because after the excavation, Pierre Montet sent this material for study to the French Institute, and he never found the time to study the material. The material is still today located in the French Institute, and you will see that it's not the only material located in the French Institute today in Cairo, which is a great chance for us because we have the possibility today to study this material. So you have just a view of the kind of material from these tombs with different types of stone vessels. You have beautiful example of stone vessels of this kind here in the museum, if you want to see the same objects. Some copper objects. Here you have an axe and different tools made of copper. Ivory objects, these two lion figurines, part of a game, or this small house figurine. You see here a palette, a cosmetic palette that developed during the Predynastic period, still existed during the first dynasty. A large quantity of cylindrical vessels, a large quantity of pottery vessels. You have here a nice wine jar. This is the word we use for this type of jar. It's an amphora, if you prefer, for wine. And this type of jar was closed with a mud sealing. Egyptians used clay, humid clay, to seal the jar. So when the clay became dry, it was completely hermetic and ensured the quality of the wine contained in the jar. But on this clay, there was also names. And this is a chance for us, Egyptologists, because we can see the name of the king who gave the permission to the people buried in Abu Rawash to use this material in their tombs. I know you can't see anything, so here it's better. You see here the name of the king Den, the fifth king of the first dynasty. And in the ceilings, you have also the name of the different chancellors of the kingdom, like Emaka. My project was to re-excavate the site of Abu Rawash, the cemetery M, excavated by Pierre Montet. So it was already 10 years ago. I spent several seasons in Abu Rawash re-excavating the tombs and making a new map of this mastaba. I excavated 25 mastabas. And 100 years after Pierre Montet, sadly, the mastaba are not as preserved as they were during the time of Pierre Montet. Here you see on this picture the mastaba number 12. So it's a large mud brick feature. You see here the limit of the mud brick. It's almost 20 by 10 meters with a large rectangular pit in the middle. You notice also here a trench with different compartments. And this trench was made for what we call subsidiary tombs. Tombs to accompany the dead in the afterlife. I will come back to that also. Another view of this mastaba. You see here the remains of the bricks. So nothing compared to what I showed you on the picture of Pierre Montet. On the picture of Pierre Montet, the walls were preserved on almost 1.5 meters. Here you have only 5 millimeters of bricks still preserved, but enough to make the full plan of the tombs with the details of the bricks. So already some interesting information. And also information that Pierre Montet completely missed. For example, you have here around the mastaba a wall, a stone wall, a stone enclosure around the mastaba. You see here the details of the corner of this stone enclosure around the mastaba. No, so not only a mud brick mastaba, but also the use of stone in the architecture. Of course, for the pharaonic period, it's not something special. But here we are in the first dynasty. And with the king then, we have the first evidence, the first example of a stone architecture in Egypt. These trenches with cemetery tombs are also interesting because Pierre Montet excavated completely the site but missed several of the tombs. For example, I found some remains still in the tombs. The technique used by Pierre Montet are not the technique we are using today. So we can find more information that Pierre Montet found during his excavation. You have here a wooden coffins, which is 80 centimeters by 30 centimeters. It's quite small, with human remains inside. You have, for example, the skull here, completely mixed because the tomb was looted, but you still have a small cylindrical pot outside the coffin, and here you have the leg of a bull, the leg of a cow, located at the south of this coffin. So we still have a tomb with a human deposited in this coffin with offerings of pottery and offerings of animal bones, food offerings associated with the tomb. The questions of these tombs are important because some Egyptologists would like to see here an example of human sacrifice. And there is absolutely no archaeological evidence to support the idea of human sacrifice. This idea comes from the site of Abydos. In Abydos, the first kings of the first dynasty were buried in similar tombs, larger than this one, of course, with also hundreds of people buried around their tombs. But those people have never been killed. We have no evidence to say that they were killed to be buried with the kings. Those people were buried because they were the members of the family, or they were people close to the kings. In the same way that in Giza, for the fourth dynasty, you have the mastaba of the aristocrats, the mastaba of the people close to the kings, installed close to the pyramids. So here we have the tomb of probably a high official of the time of Den buried with the families around this tomb. The architecture is interesting because, for example, when you excavate the shaft, you find here the bottom of the shaft with the entrance of the burial chamber. So the burial chamber is there, and you have 1, 2, 3 other rooms which were used as storerooms for the grave goods, for the material deposited with the dead. But you have also two very large stones, two very large slabs. Here you have a profile of this tomb. So you see here this large rectangular pit I mentioned, a vertical shaft going to the burial chamber. This burial chamber was closed with what we call a portcullis. There was a stone coming from the top, going through different grooves installed in the rock, and installed in front of the entrance of the burial chamber to close the burial chamber. You see here these large stones. So you have to imagine that this large stone was in front of the door. So it works like that to close the burial chamber. And we have good evidence of that in Abu Rawash because some of these slabs were still in situ. We are here in another tomb, the Mastaba M11, and you see here these two slabs still in situ to close the access to the burial chamber. Yes, you can see the sky there because this tomb was reused during the pharaonic period as a quarry and has been destroyed by the pharaonic people. But what is interesting, you notice also that the upper part of the portcullis is broken. It was broken probably by looters who entered the tombs before the pharaonic period to take all the material from the tombs. So one evidence, but we have hundreds of them, that those tombs have been looted during the times of just after the funerals. Among the material, we have several examples of these mud brick inscriptions with the name of the king then. And we have also thousands and thousands of pottery sherds. You see, for example, here the first dynasty wine jars. I show you a complete example of a wine jar, which help us to date those tombs. And these tombs, these 25 mastaba, have been used only during the reign of the king then. So we have here an example of an aristocratic cemetery, people very close to the kings, buried in Abu Rawash. The question, and I still can't answer this question, is why were those people buried in Abu Rawash and not in Saqqara? Because in Saqqara, for the first dynasty, you have also a very large cemetery. Maybe here we are outside of the capital, outside of the Memphite area, and this cemetery could be related to a local community installed outside Memphis. It's a possibility. We don't know exactly. But this excavation that I made in Abu Rawash helped us to get more information about the people buried there. Here, this tomb is the one I showed you at the beginning. You have a large mastaba, again. You see here the mud brick walls, subsidiary tombs at the west of the mastaba. You can guess here the facade palace with the different niches, but this wall again was preserved on more than 1 meter at the time of Monte. This is a picture of Monte, and this is the same one. Okay, so you see the difference because we are 100 years after. But we still have some very interesting information. For example, you notice that on this mastaba, there is a very large quantity of wood. And this wood is part of the roof, the architecture of the mastaba, but not only. Some beams are in fact not beams, but fragments of coffins. But also something else. Aha! Just a view here of these subsidiary burials still intact at the time of Pierre Montet. So each one is an individual tomb, and inside you have a body buried in these tombs. Another view of this mastaba M7 that I just showed you with these subsidiary burials. These tombs were located very close to the edge of the cliff, probably to be visible in the landscape. You remember I told you that the Nile was flowing probably in this area, so that means that all the community living there was able to see the tombs on top of the hill. The important people are buried there, and they want to show off. They want to be seen after their death. In some of these tombs, I've also found some of these subsidiary burials. You have here one small tomb covered here with a lid, a wooden lid, and when you remove the lid, you have the wooden coffin. I know it's not very well preserved because it was completely eaten by white ants, but you have here the coffins with an individual buried on the side. You see the skull, the hips, the legs, buried on the left side in a contracted position with a wine jar and other material. And the material in the subsidiary tombs are exactly the same type of materials that you are going to find in the mastabas themselves. Interesting story now. When we re-excavated this mastaba number 6, we found something very interesting. On this mastaba number 6, this is a description of the mastaba made by Pierre Montet. And somewhere in the description, I'm not going to translate the text, Pierre Montet said that he found a wooden board. Okay, but we have bricks, we've got stone enclosure around some of the mastaba, but we have nothing wood outside the mastaba. So I decided to re-excavate this mastaba, and we found a piece of wood, a large piece of wood. But this wood is in fact the remain of a boat. It's a boat. So here you have this mastaba You have to imagine that there was a large mud brick mastaba on top, which has completely, which is gone. It's also my fault because there were some remains of bricks there full of straw. I collected all the bricks. I sieved all the bricks to collect the straw because the straw is a very good material for C14. So based on that, I've got absolute dating. I've got radiocarbon dating, so I can now base my chronology on the material, the pottery material, but also on radiocarbon dating, and we can confirm the dates of the king then. That's why I did that. So you have this mastaba there, and you see here these remains of wood. Just a close view here of this wood. You have different planks of woods, and these planks are full of rectangular holes. You see these rectangular holes. The technique used here to construct this boat is the same technique used to make coffins. It's exactly the same. The difference is in the thickness of the wood and in the dimensions of this wall, of these holes, these rectangular holes. Why these holes? Because these boats are what we call sawn boat. You have here an example from the Niger, and you see that you have different planks, and that all the planks are linked together with pieces of ropes. So it's exactly the same thing here. In each of these hole, you had a rope going in the hole, going to the other one, going to the other one. And that was the best way to construct a boat for the first dynasty. But not only, because if you look at the boats constructed during the Old Kingdom period or after, you have exactly the same technique used. In this architecture, we see also the use of mortise and tenon joint to make this wall stronger. So, we excavated these remains of a boat. We found here 5 meters of wood. There are 12 planks, if I remember, with these holes everywhere. And we have here 1/4 of a boat. This boat was probably between 12 and 40 meters long. So we have to imagine that the boat was this size. And what is interesting is that just there, I come back, just there you have this kind of circular mud feature, and the circular mud feature is just the edge of the pit in which the boat was deposited. Also interesting, on the boat himself, you've got these remains of the wall, the mud brick wall protecting the boat, but you have also some pottery deposited. Same here, you have here some remains of pottery, offerings made for the boat. Here are the jars, this time beer jars, that we found associated with this boat. I told you that we did some radiocarbon dating from the features, but also from the boat, and all the radiocarbon dating gave the time of 2950 BC. This is a list of all the radiocarbon dates. This is published in an article I made recently. And we can, based on these dates, we can refine the date of the reign of the king Den, thanks to this boat from Abu Rawash. So what is this boat? This boat is part of the offering made for the dead. The dead is buried in the tomb with wine jars, with beer jars, but also with all the objects that they use during their life. And part of the identity of these people is the boat, because the boat was probably something important in their life. Maybe they were just navigated on the Nile River on the boat, they were showing off on the boat, like in a Porsche. It's exactly the same thing. And they were buried with the boat for the eternity. I like to say to my students, it's like having a Rolex. I don't have a Rolex, but it's like having a Rolex, and you decide to be buried with your Rolex in your tomb. It's exactly the same thing. But what is also interesting is that we found boats everywhere on the site. So we have now 5 complete or almost complete boats in Abu Rawash. You see here another plank. I should not say complete, they are not complete, but we have the remains of 5 boats in Abu Rawash. And these boats are all dated from the first dynasty and are the earliest boats today preserved in Egypt. So part of the grave goods. And some of them have been studied in the Grand Egyptian Museum. You see here the remains of the Grand Egyptian Museum, where the Egyptian colleagues did a lot of analysis. For example, we know that this is acacia, not cedar, because when we found this boat, people said, oh, you found cedar boats, because they are elite boats. No, 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 they are acacias boat. We found also remains of linen and papyrus in these boats, and these boats are still under study because we want now to make sure that we want to demonstrate that these boats have been used in the water and that they are not just fake boats constructed for the dead during the funerals. So this is a reconstruction made by my Egyptian colleagues, and I've been told that one of these boats is today on display in Ismailia, in the new Museum of the Suez Canal. So if you have the opportunity to go to Ismailia, think about this boat. So you see that the site developed largely during the late period and during the first dynasty. So what other evidence do we have? Close to this site here, we have here a small site excavated this time by a famous German Egyptologist. I'm sure that all of you know the name of Lepsius. Lepsius went to Abu Rawash. He described the site of Abu Rawash in the Denkmaler. You have here the description in the Denkmaler. He published a map of Abu Rawash in the Denkmaler with the location of the pyramid of Radjedef. But he also described here a small pyramid there, the pyramid I11, which is called today the Lepsius pyramid. This is a view of the Lepsius pyramid, so it's just a rock. But you see the view of this pyramid. But for Lepsius, he found the remains of mud bricks in these sites. And after Lepsius, the site was studied by Nabil Swelim, who published a publication on this pyramid. And they think, Lepsius, Nabil Swelim, and others, that there was clearly a small pyramid buried on this rocky area. In this rocky area, you have also one tunnel going to a burial chamber. It's not available, it's not accessible today because there are too many garbage on this site. It's not accessible, but you still can see this pyramid in the corridor. It's quite small, as you can see here on the scale. It's 40 meters from here. Yeah, 40 meters. So it was probably something like 30 meters high, but it's quite comparable to other provincial pyramids that we know for the third dynasty, especially for the reign of Uni. You have here the example of Nakada, the example of Zawet el-Mayatin, Al-Kula, and Elephantine, when you have also provincial pyramids. So we have here exactly the same thing. We have a small pyramid buried during the third dynasty, probably, in Abu Rawash. I said probably because there is absolutely no material associated with this pyramid. The pyramid is not preserved anymore, and it's difficult to assess the date of this construction. Fortunately, we have more information for the large complex of Abu Rawash. And Abu Rawash is very well known for this specific complex, the complex of the king Radjedef. So let's move now to this complex. The complex of Radjedef was studied and published by Michel Valoggia recently in 2011, 2 very nice volumes published by the French Institute. But Valoggia was not the first to excavate this site. Valoggia published this pyramid. If you go to Abu Rawash, this is what you will see today. You will see a rocky area that doesn't really look like a pyramid, but it is a pyramid. And inside you have this very large causeway going down to a burial chamber. We are here in the 4th dynasty. We are here with the king Radjedef. We know that this is the pyramid of Radjedef because we have good evidence. We have his name written in the pyramid. The king Radjedef is the son of Khufu, the very large pyramid of the Giza plateau. Radjedef decided to build his pyramid far from the pyramid of his father. And he chose the site of Abu Rawash probably because it's a very high hill. He made in Abu Rawash a pyramid which is smaller than the pyramid of his father. The pyramid was probably 68 meters high. But because the pyramid is on top of a hill, the pyramid was more elevated than the pyramid of his father. You see the competitions between the son and the father. There is nothing new there. So you have here Radjedef in this chronology. From Abu Rawash come a very large number of fragments. I will come back later to these fragments, but one of the most famous examples is this fragment of a royal statue, which is today in the Louvre Museum. There is absolutely no inscription on this statue. I put the name of Radjedef there, but it's not associated with this statue. Where you see this face very specific to this king. The material also, the quartzite used for this statue is also very specific. Again, I will come back to that later. First, the pyramid. The pyramid was mentioned by Lepsius. Lepsius, as you know, went everywhere in Egypt. He did a fantastic encyclopedia of the monuments either visible in Egypt at the time of his visit. So in the Denkmaler, he published here this plan of the pyramid of Abu Rawash, and you see here the part of that Giza. He also published some watercolors. So here you see the pyramid. There is another view, better view here. You can guess that there is a pyramid there. And the French Institute, after that, decided to work in this site. Oh, I forgot someone. I forgot Petrie, of course. Flinders Petrie went everywhere in Egypt, and in 1900, he went to Abu Rawash, of course. He did a plan of the pyramid of Abu Rawash. But after Petrie, Émile Chassina started a project in Abu Rawash. Émile Chassina worked in Abu Rawash from 1901 and 1902, and he excavated a large part of this pyramid. He cleaned a large part of the pyramid, let's say. Then Pierre Lacaud, another French Egyptologist, both of them worked for IFAO, and Émile Chassina is very well known for his role in the Louvre Museum. So another Egyptologist, Pierre Lacaud, also worked in Abu Rawash. And by the way, Pierre Lacaud is the one who told Pierre Montet there are some remains of stone vessels that could be from the 1st dynasty. You should have a look. Okay, so the work we are here. This is a camp close to the pyramid, and the site of excavated by Pierre Montet is there at 1.5 kilometers from the pyramid. So Pierre Lacaud also started his work in Abu Rawash, and he worked between 1912 and 1913 in Abu Rawash at the same time than Pierre Montet, also in Abu Rawash. And then came Michel Valoggia. Michel Valoggia, a Swiss Egyptologist, he was a professor at the University of Geneva. He is retired now. And from almost 10 years, from 1995 to 2006, he worked in Abu Rawash, and he really cleaned and studied the pyramid of Abu Rawash. So we can base all our knowledge of the pyramid on the publication and the work of Valoggia. but you will understand later why these two names are also important. The site was covered by the British Army in the early part of the 20th century. So we have aerial views of Abu Rawash, and on one of these views we can see here this very large causeway going from the top of the mountain, going to the pyramid, to the Valley Temple. The Valley Temple maybe still exists, but there is a military base at the location of the temple today, so it's impossible to go there. The causeway is still visible, still exists, but sadly, since now 2 years, there is a highway going in the middle of the causeway. So this causeway, part of the causeway still exists, but not completely, because there is a highway in the middle. A view of this pyramid, so you can recognize it was after the excavation of Michel Valoggia. You do recognize the pyramid here, this very large trench that I showed you before, an enclosure wall around the pyramid, a complex of temples here, and also this pit, which is a boat pit. I mentioned the boats from Abu Rawash for the first dynasty. We should mention, of course, the boats from Khufu in Giza, but there was also boats in other pyramids, like in Abu Rawash. The remains of these boats has never been found, but you will see that in this pit there was other interesting things inside the pit of this boat. Michel Valoggia made the excavation of this pyramid. At the time he made the excavation of this pyramid, Michel Valoggia used the largest crane available in Egypt, because he removed blocks of several tons from the inside of the pyramid. You have the pyramid there in the middle, a large enclosure wall around the pyramid with different phases. So this one is the first phase of the enclosure wall, while the pyramid was not completely constructed. You see the second phase with the pyramid itself and the temples around, and the last two phases of the pyramid with the development of the temples. This is from the publication of Michel Valoggia. During the excavation, Michel Valoggia found the foundation deposit. There are thousands and thousands of small dummy vessels associated with this complex. And then he also excavated this very large trench going down in the rock, going to this large, so there is a vertical shaft here, going to this very large chamber. And Michel Valoggia also found evidence of the name of Radjedef during his work. So you have here on this block some inscriptions where you can see here, for example, the name of Radjedef. That's why we can today associate this pyramid to the king Radjedef and not to another one. A reconstruction of the pyramid based on the work of Michel Valoggia, and I hope that with this one you will understand what is this trench in this profile. This trench is going there to the bottom. You have this very large vertical shaft, and you have to imagine that the burial chamber was constructed inside this at the bottom of this large trench, and that the pyramid, I come back, was constructed above that. It's interesting to see also this Inselberg, as the word used by Michel Valoggia. Egyptians use, for Michel Valoggia, more than 40% of the pyramid is in fact the natural rock. There was a hill there, and they use this hill to build the pyramid. In the same way that for the pyramid of Lepsius I showed you before, Egyptians use this natural rock to build the pyramid on top. Okay, so it's a gain in energy and material. So the pyramid was built on top of this natural rock and was constructed, completely constructed. So it was not, come back again, it was not dug completely in the rock, it was partially dug in the rock and then constructed above. So all the burial chamber was constructed inside this very large trench and at the bottom of this vertical shaft, which makes also the things quite easy to place the coffins inside this shaft. Sadly, during the excavation, Michel Valoggia has never found any evidence of the material associated with this pyramid. We know that the pyramid was used. We know it because associated to the pyramid, there is a satellite pyramid for a queen. And Michel Valoggia found a calcite coffin inside the satellite pyramid, but nothing related to the king Radjedef. Something happened. Something happened after the reign of Radjedef, or a long time after the reign of Radjedef, but nothing is preserved today. Outside the pyramid, you recognize here this natural rock with different steps. On these steps, you have to imagine that they were blocks placed on these steps with a slope of 52 degrees. This is exactly the slope that we find in other pyramids. And that the pyramid was covered with granite blocks, at least in the basement, exactly like in the pyramid of Menkaure. Exactly in the same thing. So the final reconstruction of this pyramid is this one, with a pyramid which is 106 meters at the base, 68 meters high, inside a large enclosure wall with different gates to access the pyramid. You see here the queen pyramid, the satellite pyramid for the queen, and the temples associated with the pyramid. If we compare to other pyramids, you have here Radjedef, 16 meters at the base. Just as a comparison, Cheops was 230 meters. 68 meters for Radjedef, but 446 meters for Cheops. But if you compare now to Mykerinos, the pyramid of Radjedef is almost the same size than the pyramid of Mykerinos, Menkaure. Close to the pyramid, you have this pyramid temples excavated by Michel Valoggia, and Michel Valoggia reconstructed partially this temple so they can be visible today in the landscape. You have here is a reconstruction. This temple associates this large boat pit with different rooms, some rooms associated with the royal cult of the king, and other rooms for the priest in charge of the cult of the king, in charge of the pyramid. All the material found during the excavation comes only from this boat pit. This is what I call the pit of the solar bark. Again, Michel Valoggia made this reconstruction with a boat inside. So the boat, if there was a boat, the boat was the size of the boat of Khufu. The boat preserved close to the pyramid of Khufu. But during the excavation, no fragments of wood is documented. Nothing. The only thing found in this pit are fragments of quartzite. And maybe, because I'm sure you are familiar with this museum, you do recognize here these fragments of quartzite. This fragment of quartzite preserved here in this museum in Munich come from this boat pit, with other thousands of fragments of quartzite. And these quartzite fragments are in fact all the fragments of the statuary, the statues of the king Radjedef. All these statues were located in the temple. They have been completely destroyed, placed in this pit, and lost in this pit. With some colleagues here in Munich, we have decided to start a project. And this project was launched by Melanie Flossman, who is in the room here today. So Melanie Flossman started a project to document in 3 dimensions these fragments of the king Radjedef. She worked with Nicolas Lercari, here, also from Munich, and they went together to the Louvre Museum to scan here the statues, the fragments housed in the Louvre Museum. And they did the same here in Munich. You do recognize here Christophe Barbotin, the conservator of the Egyptian collection in the Louvre Museum. Melanie also went to IFAO. Remember, I told you that Pierre Montet left in the basement of IFAO thousands of fragments of vessels from the cemetery of the First Dynasty. I mentioned Chassina and Laco. Chassina and Laco did the same. After the excavation, the best objects were to the Louvre Museum, to the Egyptian Museum, but all the fragments, all the poor fragments were left in the basement of IFAO. And in the boxes there, you have almost 1,000 or maybe more than 1,000 fragments of quartzite, and these fragments of quartzite are part of these statues. So with Melanie, we started to scan these fragments. So here you see Melanie Flossman. It was in November last year, using an iPhone, because the new generation of iPhone is built with a very good sensor to make a 3D model of these blocks from the statue of Radjedef. And Melanie worked with Carl Elkins, which is here in this room, and Carl created different stencils of statues in which he can place now the fragments of the different statues from the different collections. So the aim of the project is to recreate virtually all the statues of Radjedef. So I don't want to say more about that because Melanie is going to talk about this project, I think, in a couple of weeks. In 2 weeks' time. So she will give you all the details. But you see that from this old excavation, there are still new information we can get. And new information to inform about the time of a king that we hear is almost completely unknown. For example, you have here a fragment from the Louvre Museum, and this one is interesting because you have here the legs of the king. It's easy to recognize the king because his name is written there, Radjedef. And you have here a woman, a small woman. If you look carefully, you see here the right arm of the woman going behind the leg of the king. This is a princess. The princess, probably the princess Renteka. Because in the document we have the name of the princess, we have the name also of the sons of Radjedef. Just a view of this queen. We have also in the Louvre Museum a statue of Setka, one of the sons of Radjedef. Or we have also this torso, this time of maybe could be a daughter of Radjedef. So you see that with all these different elements, we can reconstruct, we can get more information about Radjedef. So now the big question is what happened exactly in Abu Rawash? We have now, based on the information collected by Michel Valoggia, collected by others, a better idea of what happened. First, this pyramid was finished. Because in the documentation, in the publication, you are going to find that the pyramid of Abu Rawash was never finished, that Khufu stopped, not Khufu, but that the sons of Radjedef stopped the work of his father, and that the pyramid was never finished. No, the pyramid was finished. We have all the evidence that the pyramid was finished, but has been dismantled after the reign of Radjedef. Then came a very, very bad theory. The theory of the damnatio memoriae. The idea that something happened during the reign of Radjedef, and that during his reign, the memory of the king was deleted, and that during his reign, or just after, all the image, all the statues of the kings were completely destroyed. Well, this idea is not supported by the archaeological documentation. Why? Because all the fragments I showed you are from the boat pit, and all the fragments were discovered in other archaeological layers close to the pyramid, which date from the Greco-Roman period. It seems that the pyramid of Radjedef was used during the Greco-Roman period as a quarry. For example, we have here in the publication of Michel Beau the evidence of tunnels of thieves going inside the burial chamber to get the material. We have also evidence that the fragments of statues have been destroyed maybe by metal object, metal hammers. So as part of the study we are doing with Melanie, the idea will be also to study all the traces on the statue to see if the statues have been destroyed by copper objects or by iron object. And if they have been destroyed by iron object, it's a good evidence that it was done during the Greco-Roman period and not before. Do I have 10 more minutes? Okay. Because it's not finished. It's not finished. If now we come back to the first phase, remember the first dynasty. Close to the first dynasty cemetery, there is another cemetery, the Necropolis F, excavated by Fernand Bisson de la Roque. And when Fernand Bisson de la Roque excavated this site, so we are, sorry, the pyramid is there, and we are at 1.5 kilometers in this area. This is a view of the cemetery F. It's not when you visit the site the first time, you really don't want to work there. But the site is interesting. Fernand Bisson de la Roque worked there in the 1950s, 1922, 1924. Fernand Bisson de la Roque worked in Abu Rawash, and he excavated this cemetery. So we have, for example, this picture of the workers of Fernand Bisson de la Roque removing the debris from these tombs. And Fernand Bisson de la Roque studied all these tombs. We've got his archive at IFAO, with, for example, here we have a mastaba with a vertical shaft going to the burial chamber and a coffin at the bottom of the burial chamber. So we have a lot of indications, very precious indication for us, because, for example, this coffin, we have also pictures of this coffin there. It looks like a beautiful limestone coffin with a palace facade decoration. And this coffin, maybe you know this coffin. It's in the Leuven Museum today. The coffin is in the Leuven Museum, so when you come from the Osiris crypt, you arrive in the middle of these coffins, and you have this beautiful Abu Rawash coffin in front of you. This coffin is from this cemetery. And Bisson de la Roque first thought that this cemetery was a cemetery from the 6th dynasty associated with local elite, provincial elite. Recently, my colleagues Michel Beau, which sadly is dead, started a new project on the cemetery F. And Michel Beau, based on the material he found, this coffin, inscriptions and all the material, managed to show that the cemetery is in fact the cemetery of the royal sons, the sons of Radjedef. The sons of Radjedef were buried there in the cemetery M, and we have no names associated with the tombs, but Setka I just showed you, or the princess I just showed you, were maybe buried in the cemetery F. So there is more work to do in the cemetery F. I knew that I don't have time to show you everything, but the last one, the last example I want to show you is this statue. Yeah. Ulrich Surosian is smiling because we discovered this statue together in the Grand Egyptian Museum a couple of months ago. The statue is a beautiful statue discovered in Abu Rawash in 2019. In 2019, the guards in Abu Rawash discovered this statue, and the statue is today in the Grand Egyptian Museum. It's difficult to understand from where is the statue, so I'm now in contact with the inspectors of Abu Rawash, and I'm planning to publish an article about this statue, because the statue is exceptional. It's exceptional. The style first is clearly a 4th dynasty statue. Then in the statue we've got some inscriptions, and we have here a royal son. We have a prince. We have a prince with a name, Itisen. So this statue is probably a statue coming from the cemetery F, the cemetery I just showed you. So you see that here the story is not finished. We still can do more excavation in Abu Rawash, and we can find more information. Sadly, I don't have time to say more. So I'm going to stop here. there is still a lot to say about Abu Rawash after the 4th dynasty, but that will be another story. So thank you very much.